Rishi Sunak, the Indian origin Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has sacked the Indian origin Home Minister Suella Braverman for hate mongering. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. British politics is as usual in the midst of a dramatic churn. Moments ago, the United Kingdom Supreme Court halted the Sunak government's so-called Rwanda plan, a plan to deport illegal immigrants. This is one in a series of setbacks for Rishi Sunak's government. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom sacked the contentious Suella Braverman, often accused of hate mongering. She had most recently accused the United Kingdom police of taking sides when it came to Israel-Palestine protests. But the question is wide open. Can Rishi Sunak now survive? In a scathing public letter after her sacking, Braverman said that Rishi Sunak did not have the mandate to continue as Prime Minister. While Rishi Sunak was hailed as the Damad of India, remember he's married to Akshita Murthy, an Indian citizen, this is one moment perhaps when Indians will not really be partaking or linking themselves perhaps directly to what's going on in the United Kingdom. All of this at a time when Indian Foreign Minister Jai Shankar is in the United Kingdom and met the new Foreign Secretary David Cameron, earlier the Prime Minister of UK. I know your head is spinning as I'm saying all of this. So to make sense of it, let's introduce our guest on the program today as we look at what's going down and up in the United Kingdom. Joining us is Ambassador Navtej Sarnad, veteran diplomat as well as author. He served as India's envoy to the United Kingdom. Good to see you as always, Ambassador. Also joining us from London today is Shravani Basu. She's of course a well-known author and a writer. It's always good to have you with us. And also joining us is a lawyer and a councillor with the Conservative Party, Pranav Bhanot. Always a pleasure, Pranav. And really the head does spin, Pranav. And since you're affiliated with the Conservative Party, I'm going to ask you as a young politician today, are you able to make sense of what's happening? Your party has been through all kinds of churns. 10 Downing Street has almost become like a revolving door address, prime ministers coming and going. Now questions being asked about whether this one can actually stay on till the next elections are held. I just want your sense, Pranav. We'll start with you. Can we unmute? Pranav, you're muted at your end. If you can just unmute yourself and go ahead.
You're absolutely right. I mean, so much has happened. And, you know, one thing I always take from your show, Barkha, is it's not so much what is said, but it's how it is said. And I think that's really what let Suella down over the course of the weekend. I actually think she made some very genuine points that have resonated with a real silent majority in this country. But I think what really got to number 10 is the way it's been said, number one, and number two, articles going out into the press without following the right approvals process. And I think that really did get to number 10. Now, I think it's really important to remember that as a Home Secretary, you know, you've got to be responsible for stability, for security, and sensibility. And I find some of the divisive language being used, whilst it may resonate with some people in this country, it has a real impact in creating divisions, stoking various tensions. And that's not what really we should be looking at from a Home Secretary. So I think she made some valid points. They resonate with the public, but it's the way she said it. And believe it or not, I'm not sure if you're part of her Facebook supporters group.
Now, no. Yeah. Why would I be part of? Why, Pranav, do you think, if we could just come out of these pictures, please, why, Pranav, do you think I would be part of Suella Braverman's Facebook support group? I hope you were showing classic British poker face humor there.
It was rhetoric.
Yes,
but they've changed the title of the Facebook group to Suella for Prime Minister. Her membership has gone up by a few thousand overnight. So this could all be very calculated. You know, she's a very smart barrister. She was the Attorney General. I think she knew what was going to happen with the Rwanda judgment today. And I think, you know, all of this is part of potentially a ploy to maybe take on the leadership, but perhaps that's a question for another day.
Well, that's very interesting. And I'm asking my producers to actually pull up that newly edited Facebook page of Suella Braverman, now pitching her as a possible prime ministerial candidate. Before I go to Ambassador Sarna, let me ask you this, Pranav. Do you believe Rishi Sunak can survive the remaining few months he has left in office as prime minister?
I think so. I do appreciate that there have been some letters of no confidence, but really, the Tories are up for a very, very hard period between now and the next election. And it will require all the factions of the party to come together. Otherwise, it could be a real problem when it comes to election day. Now, I think David Cameron being there will probably help. It's an old hand, an experienced hand, a visionary. If
And the architect of Brexit.
he was. I think he was put in that corner, but I think that's probably a conversation for another day. But if Rishi Sunak is the details guy, the technocrat, without so much of the vision and the ability to win, I think David Cameron could potentially be that guiding hand. So I think he's safe for the moment. But as you say, politics is a week is a long time in politics, and anything can happen.
Well, these are quite literally, Ambassador Sarna, Diwali fireworks. Indians not just in people of Indian origin in the United Kingdom, but Indians in India were very happy to claim Rishi Sunak as our own, not so much Braverman. How do you look at all that is happening, Ambassador?
Well, thank you, Barkha, and great pleasure to be with you as always. I've said this before on your show, that I do not attach much importance to this Indian origin factor. I think people like Rishi Sunak have spent their entire life proving that they are British, and rightly so. And I think we tend to go overboard any time somebody of Indian origin does something of credit in another country. So I think we need not take the blame either about the Indian origin prime minister firing the Indian origin outspoken home secretary. So I don't think that is a factor. Britain is today a very sort of cosmopolitan, multicultural, multi-ethnic country, and there are people from origin from all kinds of places. So having said that point, I think this is something which actually shows the entire weakness that the UK government has been wrestling with after a very sort of dramatic turn last year when we had a short term of Liz Truss, etc. So it has been a government which hasn't inspired much confidence. The Tories have been very much on the electoral back foot. I think there's a deficit, and it's supposedly expanding, of about 21% with Labour. And there is a lot of discontent. I'm not sure. I think your other two panelists here are far more in the know of British politics, but I'm not sure that this step is going to make much of a difference in terms of votes. In any case, I think Braverman.
Are you saying Braverman is a non-factor? Are you saying Braverman is a non-factor?
I think she will try to. She has said it in a letter that she's probably going to start a little rebellion somewhere on the right fringes of the party, the so-called red wall, and I think that might happen. But whether, I don't think it really is going to impact. It's not going to impact the overall chances of the Tories too much, and nor, frankly, I think is the coming of Cameron. Which I think is, he looks the part. Let us say, but whether he comes with a lot of baggage. He comes with the baggage of Brexit, having been a Remainer in chief, and then having to muddle his way through Brexit, and then sort of seeming to desert the government. He also comes with a lot of baggage on foreign policy aspects, for instance, the investments from China, and so on. And so I don't, but at the moment, he gives you a feeling of, yes, we've gone a little more towards the center. Here's an experienced man. It's almost an admission by Rishi Sunak that I need an adult in my cabinet. So, I'll leave it at that. Happy to come back with you.
That's quite a statement that Cameron's re-entry, Shavani, is an admission by Rishi Sunak, possibly of two things. One, I need adult help. Two, is it a move by the Conservatives to move somewhat to the center? This, as Israel-Palestine, of course, opens fault lines across the world. This is not just in the United Kingdom. And quite interestingly, Keir Starmer, the front face of Labour, has not called for a ceasefire either. I just want to sort of place the politics up front. How are you seeing things?
Right. On the subject of Cameron, one of the reporters texted as soon as they saw him walking up Downing Street that day that Daddy's back. So that was the sort of general thing. Yeah, he's back. But yeah, on the subject of it's one of these days. Today has been a really important day in British politics, of course, with the Rwanda judgment.
Yeah.
Suella, of course, who was also fired one year, Diwali day again. Rishi came in on a Diwali, Suella's fired on another Diwali, as you said. But she was fired once before. She has a track record. Fired as Home Secretary previously, fired a second time. And she's gone out with a scathing letter, trying to demean Rishi Sunak as much as possible, basically saying that you were there because we did a deal and I put you into Downing Street. You were never elected. It's a 3-page rant. So that's saying something that wouldn't please anybody, So, and she's promising more. So I don't think she's going to go away quietly. She's not somebody who does. She has a certain right-wing support behind her, and they will keep gutting. I mean, almost immediately, this one letter appeared of no confidence.
But do you believe that it's inconsequential, as Ambassador Sarna suggests, or do you believe that Rishi Sunak? So they're twin things happening here, right? There's Braverman and the whole fiasco with Braverman and her making noise on the far right of the party. There's the Supreme Court saying your plan to deal with the immigration question, deporting people who come to our country off to Rwanda. That's not acceptable. These are two big setbacks.
Exactly. And Rishi Sunak, let's not forget, I mean, Stop the Boats is one of his big campaigns. So that's not going down well following this judgment. He's got it on his lectern, Stop the Boats. That's one of the first 5 things he has. How is he going to take it from here? He's going to address a press conference today. It's likely that, the talk is that he's pointed out in his first sort of reaction already that the court has said that it is not illegal to send to another country. So are they going to consider that now a second country, Rwanda being out of the taking? So who knows what, I can't say what they will decide. But the judgment was so critical, unanimous by 5 judges. And that's really important because not only did it say Rwanda, it also reminded them that they can't leave. It's not just the European Court of Human Rights, European Convention of Human Rights. They are under obligation to UN rules and also British laws, which protect refugees, which are laws enforced against torture and sending back to places where, so considering a second country might be troublesome anyway. So all this is a mess for Rishi Sunak, who has to take this on. And the new Home Secretary.
I have a question for you before I go back to Pranav. Ambassador Navdeep Sarna just said that, their being of Indian origin is inconsequential to how we should look at this. We should either be, we should neither have been excited, nor do we need to take the blame for their decisions. But there is a larger intriguing question here. These are 2 politicians, both from multicultural backgrounds, Indian links, seem to be extremely unfriendly on the immigration question. And to that extent, it does become relevant for the politics that is playing out today in the United Kingdom. Secondly, the fault line that Israel and Palestine and the protests accompanying both sides of the divide have taken are also polarizing opinion around the world. And in Western countries in particular, where Sunak and Biden have stood in solidarity with Israel, they are going to have an impact on domestic politics in the UK as well, aren't they? Shravan.
Even the Labour Party is divided on this. So, it's not just the Tories have this problem. Labour, Keir Starmer has not called for a ceasefire. He has had people resigning as councillors who say, call for a ceasefire now. So he is facing this problem. Today, he's trying to introduce another debate in Parliament about the ceasefire, and he sort of worded it as a long break in the hostility, a humanitarian break. So they're playing with words, but he himself is struggling with his party. So And the very, very strong opinions. Lots of people watching on the TV screens cannot, are just calling for a ceasefire. So there is, both parties are trying to deal with this at the moment, as are
Pranav,
people around the world. In fact,
Pranav, the Supreme Court judgment, it's a setback for Rishi Sunak as well. Where do you see the politics going from here, especially on some of the questions that Suella Braverman raised, especially on Rishi Sunak's committed sort of solidarity with Israel, even as large section of global opinion are now, calling for a ceasefire because of what's happening with women and children, in particular in Gaza. I'm not trying to make this a foreign policy debate. I'm just trying to understand UK's domestic mood right now.
I think immigration has been a long-standing issue, but with the same token, I think it was always an uphill struggle that the government were going to get the result that they were looking for today. You only have to have a very cursory interest in law to get a sense of what kind of position the Supreme Court were likely to take. And of course, Suella, I think, knew what the outcome was going to be, and took maneuvers to keep herself out of office for today. Now, I still believe that immigration, is a hot topic, and it's going to be an election issue. And so whatever's going to have to happen, there's going to have to be some realignment to come up with some policy that's likely to be legal. I don't think they can drop this. It's absolutely something everybody's talking about. And I think they're going to have to find something that's legal and that can work. And that's the bottom line. Nothing should be over and above the law. And the rule of law absolutely needs to be maintained. I mean, the world looked to the courts of England and Wales for their hand and their guidance, and this is what we've seen today. Now, on the point of the ceasefire, I think my esteemed colleague has said, both parties have got this issue. Do you call for a ceasefire? Do you not? My view is that patience may start waning, and I think there's going to be more pressure coming in from the US, from the UK to this Israeli government, whispers in the ear to say, right, I think there needs to be some more kind of give and take here. That things have to calm down. I think what's happened up until now is not acceptable, and I think there will have to be some sort of dialogue to calm things down a little bit, because it's not a sustainable way in which things are playing out in the Middle East at the moment.
Ambassador Sada, you've of course been ambassador of India to Israel as well, and so therefore you've seen sort of this debate from both sides, from the Western perspective and from West Asia. But this is upending politics as we know it, especially in Western democracies. In America, the left is split. In the United Kingdom, Labour is split. Your conventional ideas of who is right-wing and left-wing on this issue are getting challenged. None of the old labels are fitting. Rishi Sunak is standing in solidarity with Israel, but at the same time, let's remember, this latest sacking has come on the questioning of the UK police's handling of Palestinian protesters. So there is a subliminal sort of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia debates at the heart of this. How do you see this playing out, Navtesh?
No, I think, yes, this is, I know it was building up in any case, but I think this is almost an indirect consequence of what's happening in Gaza, because this is the building up of public opinion all over the world. And there is a disconnect between many of the governments, in particularly the United States, UK. To some extent, it's beginning to happen in the rest of Europe. And I think this sort of disconnect is going to cause tensions. Until and unless this so-called window of legitimacy, quote unquote, which has been given to Israel, it really comes quickly to a halt. So you are going to see more and more of these things happening. I think you can already see a huge amount of dissent happening in the United States within the government. I mean, you have 400 government officers writing in a letter. You have the dissent channel within the State Department, very crowded out there. You have different ways of, dissent within the government coming out, leave alone in the universities and all that. So I think this is going to it's going to build up. And I think the pressure on Rishi Sunak is going to come very fast, perhaps even faster than it comes on Biden. And I think today's judgment that I've seen again it will play into all this. I know they are not directly connected, but it does. His first reaction to this Braverman letter claims with great pride that we brought down the boats by one third. That's not going to go down well either in this thing. So this entire human rights, civilian rights, this movement is going to load on to all these things, especially when both the UK and the US go into elections. I think countries can no longer stay isolated in their own domestic political bubble.
But isn't the corollary also true that as the pressure increases from human rights groups, from those asking for civilian rights to be protected in this conflict, there's also sometimes a countervailing right-wing force, right, which consolidates. That also happens. That can also happen. Today, there's conversation about whether Trump will be stronger in the United States of America because of the way Biden has handled this. My question to you is, how considerably, Ambassador Sarna, has Rishi Sunak been weakened by the twin developments of Braverman questioning his mandate and the UK Supreme Court shutting down his Rwanda immigration plan?
I think Rishi Sunak is definitely weakened. What he's trying to do through the cabinet reshuffle, I think has a sense of desperation about it, and it's not a political masterstroke. It's a sort of desperate gathering of forces to see how can we sort of retrieve the situation. So certainly, if Cameron has been brought in on the foreign policy front, it is because Cameron is a known figure. And in a term when the world is in a crisis, when there's a lot of talking to do with other leaders and other foreign ministers. And I think Cameron therefore fits the bill, despite the fact that he is a kind of a no change message. He's also a message which is not very clean, given his personal record outside just before this happened, that little scandal about green sales. So I think this is clearly a response to the need of the hour to handle global opinion, to handle global equations, as much as it is a signal to the centrist conservatives within the party.
I'll take that to Pranav in just a moment. But Shavani, looking on at all of this, a lot of the comments when Braverman was sacked, at least on social media, not that that's a necessary barometer, was, well done, now Sunak should go next. And then Cameron coming back, Ambassador Sarna may say that's the adult back in the cabinet, but Brexit is forever associated with David Cameron, and it has been the single most divisive issue before the Israel-Gaza conflict in the UK politics. How are the Tories being perceived today, or is that too generalized a question?
No, absolutely. It's and I agree with Navtej totally. It's an act of desperation because they are so behind in the polls. This is literally the countdown to, we are just less than a year away from the next elections. And if this is the way it goes, they're going to get it, they will be absolutely trumping in the polls. So the point is, it was desperation. He could not find, there is the counter argument. Yes, there may be an adult in the room, but he got Brexit. He walked away from the country whistling as he left, and, is this the man to bring back? He's also, there are questions on China, questions on Green Seal, his involvement. So basically, it's not a very clear, he's not Mr. Clean in that sense. But it is also seen as somebody who could not get anybody from his current MPs, his parliamentarians. Now, the problem is Cameron cannot sit in the House of Commons. So how do you question him? Because he's been made a Lord overnight. So he sits in the House of Lords. The minister in the Foreign Office has to be sitting in the House of Commons. There are so many logistical things. You cannot question him directly. It will be through committees. It's not the greatest thing to have done. So real act of desperation. But the only positive thing from all of this, Barkha, I have to say, is that you must say that British democracy comes out really well, because the police were independent. They did not, take on Suella saying cancel them. They took their independent decision. They handled it so well that day, because the only people, she called them hate marchers, but the hate marchers were actually at the cenotaph. They were the neo-Nazis, the right-wingers. They were the ones who caused disruption. Police knew this, they attacked it. And also the Supreme Court in judgment, completely independent. And those are the pillars of democracy that you see functioning, which are little positive lights in this whole scenario.
And one should also give some acknowledgement of the multiculturalism within the United Kingdom. Those images of I don't have to just want me to talk about this Indian link at all, but those images of the Diwali at Downing Street, the bhajans in the mandirs. These are interesting images in a sort of post-colonial or a decolonizing world, so to speak. Pranav, before I give Navtej the last word, let me just ask you, what is the mood within the party today, within the party base? Is there a sense of confusion? Is there a sense of ideological chaos? What are people your age, for example, saying?
I think there is a real division within the party. I have friends who are absolutely ecstatic by the fact that David Cameron is back in the cabinet and really believes that he could win over not so much the red wall, but the blue wall seats, and maybe those seats that could go to the Liberal Democrats. And so it's seen as a real. I appreciate some of the words used by my esteemed guests, but there could be some logic there when it comes to the next election. He does have that gravitas. However, yes, just as we've said, Suella also has a huge voter base within the party and within the public. So, in truth, it is a divided party. But what do you expect? The Conservatives have been in for so long now. So much has happened, and not everything is going to be moving in unison. I mean, Labour haven't even come in yet, and they've got divisions. So I think division's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's how the party regroup and focus really heavily on the next election. Otherwise, lots and lots of people across the world, across the country, are going to lose their jobs, and those are the MPs currently holding Conservative seats. So I'm hoping that Conservative MPs see the bigger picture here. Yes, there are various policy issues that the MPs are divided on, but actually when it comes to it, they've got to win an election. And the way they're going to win an election is by adopting some sort of unifying force behind a leader. So let's hope that's what happens going forward. But that's what my view is as the flavor of the moment within the party.
Well, that's quite candid, and I think that ideological confusion and what it transforms into. But I think Ambassador Sana, that's a fair point. Labour is bitterly divided on what position to take on especially calls for a ceasefire. Starmer has not called for it. Humanitarian pauses is a different argument. So this sort of polarized discourse, which way to swing on the spectrum of right and left, this is a challenge now for politicians globally. Quick last word: Jaishankar in the UK in the middle of this one evening meeting, who he thinks is the foreign secretary, then the person becomes the home secretary, so on. Major confusion. Any sort of implications for India here?
Well, I think it was a good thing. Our foreign minister was the right man in the right place at the right moment. When he went to the UK, according to the MEA press release, he was supposed to meet James Cleverly, so as foreign secretary. So he was. I think he's probably the first foreign minister to have had a session with Cameron, which is a good thing. I'm sure they had a great chance to discuss the world at the moment, and particularly the Middle East, and the India-UK relationship, in which has been growing. The FTA needs a final push, and I think that must have come up. So I think it's very good that they could touch base at the same time. I do want to clarify one quick point, because I did say you have an adult in the room, but I didn't necessarily say that the adult came with shining credentials. So I agree with everything that Shravani followed up by saying, because there were I was in the UK in 2016, and those were dire days.
Tough words there, tough truths, as it were. But one thing I will say, it is a highly minute-to-minute sort of entertaining political drama where the truth outpaces any Netflix series. That has to be said. Literally, one has seen so many of these British political dramas where people are being sacked and resignations are coming, and palace intrigue and palace coups are taking place. But this is actually happening in real life. Thank you very much, Ravani, Pranav, and Ambassador Sarna. And I know a lot of you want to get back to the cricket, so we're going to let you do that. Thank you for joining us. Take care and see you soon. Mojo Story has always made a commitment to its viewers to go to where the story is. And as you can see here, we are at the epicenter of the Israel war on Gaza. We are right at the front line, about 1 mile from the Gaza Strip, as the Israeli military gets ready with its tanks and its gunners to begin its final frontal assault that will take troops into Gaza. As we said, we are not like other organizations. We believe in giving you all sides of the story objectively and as much as possible from the ground. And that's exactly what we're doing here, covering the biggest global story today from the epicenter of the war zone. So please, we need your support. Support us, become a Mojo member, subscribe to us, spread the word, and thank you for your support.